Building Men is brought to you by Finish the Race Apparel, FTRapparel.com, the creators of all things building men, and by Become Stronger Industries, become-stronger.com, the creators of handmade steel maces, hammers, and other badass equipment.
When you go out, accepting that you could be attacked is a huge step in the right direction. So instead of walking out and being like, well, bad things never happen in my neighborhood, or, you know, no one's been stabbed in my town and blah, 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 whatever. Just accepting like, hey, look, it's very unlikely. However, there's a chance I get attacked. So let me at least have my mind right about the idea that that could happen. This is a potential possibility. Maybe what are some things I would do?
You're listening to the Building Men podcast with Dennis and Anthony Miralda, brothers on a mission
to help you become the strongest version of yourself, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Building Men podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Miralda. I'm joined today by a husband, a father, a teacher, a business owner, the co-owner of Endeavor Defense and Fitness. He's an author of How to Survive an Active Killer. He knows 181 ways to kill a man, and they all work. Please welcome to the podcast, Aaron Jannetti. What's up, brother?
Oh, man, 182, actually.
182?
182, yeah, that's the number.
What was the most recent one? What was it? Was it a suppository that you stick up someone's ass and it explodes? What is that last one?
You know, I'm kind of like one of those mysterious action guys. You know, I try to avoid guns. I like to kill people personally with my hands or possibly a screwdriver. My latest would be like a rusty spoon, because
right.
That way it's like a slow death. It'll be agonizing, and then tetanus, and it's a whole thing. So
you're playing the long game in the killing spot.
Always playing the long game. Like, I want you to know what happened to you, and I want you to have some time to, you know, think about, you know, maybe the bad stuff you've done in your life.
It's like Breaking Bad when Walt kills Lydia with the stevia shit that she put into her coffee. He's like, you feeling a little sick right now? That's because I put ricin in your stevia, and you're gonna die. It's amazing. So playing the long game. Here's the thing. So we met 8 minutes ago, dude. We laughed so hard for those 8 minutes. We just met. We got into some crazy topics. I don't know how we went down this path. We were talking about Ivan Drago. We were talking about the people that are hired at farms to collect the seed, quote unquote, of horses. How they do that, how we went down that path. I have no fucking clue. But I feel like, dude, that I've known you for a long time already. So I know this is going to be a great episode here.
I agree, man. I agree. That's how you always know, like you said, that's how you know it's going to be good. When you tackle so many awesome things before you even hit record, oh, man. We don't even know what's going to happen.
We have no idea.
I've got my extremely overpriced sparkling Alpine water, so, I mean, I'm ready to go.
So you're drinking Liquid Death right now. I first saw that at See Here Now concert in Asbury Park. It was the end of September. Awesome concert. Billy Idol was there, Smashing Pumpkins, Pearl Jam. Great fucking concert. Unbelievable.
Billy Idol's still at it?
He's really good too. He was wearing a leather vest, no shirt on. He's 108, I think. I don't know. I might be wrong. I might be off by a year. But he still brought it. He brought his, and it's on the beach in Asbury. It was an amazing show. But I remember seeing people walk around with Liquid Death, and I was like, is that grain alcohol? What the fuck is going on here? And it's water.
It's water.
But it's basically like making water like really fucking badass out of a can. So exactly. For those of you Liquid Death people that are listening, feel free to reach out as far as a sponsorship is concerned for Building Men. We support what you're doing with Liquid Death.
Yeah, I don't know. So my black belt at the gym that does jiu-jitsu, him and a couple of the other guys started maybe 2 months ago. I just kept seeing them with these, because this is the sparkling one, because I'm high class,
right?
So I drink sparkling mineral water. But the normal one, the unsparkled one, is a white can, and it's like gold. So it looks like, when you walk in, it looks like a Coors or something like that, like a Michelob, or like when I walked in, I was like, are you guys fucking like pounding a tall boy at noon? Like, what is going on? And they're like, nah, man, it's Liquid Death. And I was like, the hell is that? And they're like, it's mountain water from the Alps. And I was like, so it costs $3 for water? And they were like, exactly.
So,
but now look at me. I found it in a gas station here at Youngstown and was like, shit, I need to drink some of that.
Right. So with the water, will you ever put the packet of like Capri Sun or something in it and shake it up that'll make it a flavored thing, or is that not your game? Because you see people doing it. They'll put like thing and all of a sudden the water's purple or red or something. Are you in that world at all?
I love that you went to Capri Sun. Do they make mixtures with Capri Sun? Because I'd be down for that, man. So many good memories as a kid for Capri Sun, man. Except for when you jammed the straw too far and it went out the fucking back.
Let's talk about that real quick. Let's adjust that journey, because we'll get into schools and all that shit. So I remember the lunches in schools. Capri Sun were coming into the world as I was leaving that time when you'd bring your lunch to school. But the juice pouches, the juice bags, the juice sacks, whose idea was that, first of all? And the whole thing behind the straw, like you really had to be precise to get the straw into that little flappy thing without puncturing the other side and the Capri Sun flowing all over the table.
Well, yeah, and then you'd get like you had to be like precise but also assertive, which is that's a fine line to play. And then you'd be jamming that thing in and like trying not to do it, but then it would go, and then you'd end up bending the straw, or like the foil you were supposed to punch through would kind of just stretch. It wouldn't actually punch through. Like, that was the most frustrating drink to have. And it was good. Holy man.
What a great point, though. Think about teachable lessons in school that we're not learning. A Capri Sun can be a lesson with the precision and being assertive. Yeah, like, what a great lesson for school. So could you kill someone with a Capri Sun, either the bag itself, the juice, or the straw? The straw had some substance to it. I mean, it was substantial. I mean, it could do something.
Yeah, I mean, like, you could hold the person's mouth open and then like shove the bag down. That could definitely be an interesting thing. I feel like maybe like a Steven Seagal could probably take the straw up a nose and, I don't know, kill someone in that form or fashion. That might be above my pay grade. But I could take that straw and then like puncture your ear and give you crazy vertigo, and then from the vertigo maybe slowly walk you off a cliff. That could happen.
I love that we went to Steven Seagal. Another good reference from that time frame. I would think of MacGyver as well. Like MacGyver, if he had like dental floss and a paper towel roll, you were a goner.
All day. Did you watch so when MacGyver was on? I always loved it. Like it was. I feel like it was like MacGyver followed by the Highlander, or like one of the two, like back to back. And then I feel like what was the one? It's an older show. It was like The Pretender or something like that, where the dude just would do whatever the hell he wanted. Like he would just walk in and all of a sudden he was a surgeon and was like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'm good at this. And he would just do shit. That era of television shows is most likely why I'm in the career that I'm in. And also why, you go back to how you started the podcast and you were like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
That's like how I've lived my life inside of my career. Like, yeah, sure, I'll figure that out. That sounds like a lot of fun.
So good time to go back to the origin story. We talk a lot in Enlifted, and your experience working with the program as well, about language, the stories, and there's always something. There's stories that we tell ourselves, and a lot of this stuff happens in our early childhood that we suppress, that we push down. Do you remember growing up, was there a time that you were like, I really want to go into this realm where I want to go into self-defense and fighting and do all these kickboxing, MMA, jiu-jitsu, like Krav Maga? Like, was that something that you felt at a young age that was your propensity to go in that direction?
Explicitly, no. At least not that I can remember. However, self-defense and protection, those elements come up quite often throughout my childhood and then through middle school and through high school. Like the idea of standing up for somebody or being the overseer or the protector. And I've told this story a lot. My dad was not the best, all things considered. I was very young when my parents were still married. So they got divorced when I was 3. And then there was a custody battle, I feel like up until I was about 12. So I always tell people, like, take my memories with a grain of salt. However, from what I remember, I remember being smacked around a little bit. I know I've heard tons of stories about, him, hitting my mom and hitting my brother. And he was definitely emotionally and psychologically pulling strings. That stuff I can remember. So I can remember times throughout my life where protecting my mother was a big deal. And just the idea of how men treated women, if they treated them disrespectfully or if they were abusive in any way. Like, that always fired me up. I remember I was the annoying, I imagine at the time, the annoying friend that when all my buddies started drinking and acting like assholes, I was like the dad, like making sure everybody got home safe and sitting in the corner all pissed off, like sober, watching my drunk friends sit on girls and make out. I'm like, all right, bunch of fucking, I was that guy a little bit. So protection was an element that popped up a lot, wanting to take care of people, always wanting to solve people's problems, to a fault oftentimes. So that came up a lot. However, I got in fights. I enjoyed scuffling. I enjoyed like contact football. We used to do like backyard wrestling on the trampoline and stuff like that. Like, I followed wrestling growing up, but there was never I don't know that anybody ever said you could teach self-defense as a career. You know what I mean? So I don't know that I was ever like, yeah, I'm going to travel around the US and teach people, from a civilian law enforcement military standpoint, how to protect themselves and deal with that thing. That was never a thought in my brain that I was allowed to do that. I was going to be an engineer and, draw and make plans and put shit together. But underlyingly, or I should say, underlyingly, there was always that element of protection in some form or fashion. So explicitly, no. Indirectly, yes, apparently. And then I found that whatever you would consider like that, the catalyst of it, which was like, I found Krav Maga at a dark point in my life. Like, my grandfather had recently passed away, and he was the father figure in our family. I was paying my way through college. I didn't have any money to pay for the next quarter, so I had to drop out of school for a quarter. And like, then you've got like the shame of, oh my God, I'm a failure. I can't even pay for college. And then, fighting situations there. I'd recently broken up with a girlfriend. I was in a pretty shitty fucking spot. And I was either going to drink my sorrows away or go fight somebody legitimately. And luckily enough, I saw a commercial for Ohio Krav Maga while watching episodes of Fight Quest. If you remember that show, I think it was on Spike TV. And I showed up, and that was the turning point, man. There was a crossroads. I was standing at it. It was like, go fight people in a controlled setting, or drink a lot, be miserable, and go fight people in an uncontrolled setting. And luckily, I chose to go this route, and it became my career. I literally never left, so.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that point in your life as well. There's so many times that I've come into contact with people, either interviewing them or just in my own personal social life, where that point in your life where you feel, how am I going to ever get over this? How can I overcome? Where it's that low point where there's that one decision that you make, and as you look back, that's what had to happen for you to get from where you were to where you are now. That point in your life where you had to be going through that deep depressive spot. So anyone who's listening that's going through that right now, know that you are where you need to be, and it's just that next thing that you're going to get into that could be the thing that propels you forward. It's so interesting to think about things in that way. So walk us through now. So you told us about your growing up, how you had that protector idea through Krav Maga. How do you go from that point to what you're doing now? So just fill in the blanks there, because I have a lot to get back to as far as education is concerned, and then what you're doing now.
Yeah, for sure. So I took an introductory course in actually February 6, 2008. I will remember that date till the day I die. I went in for an intro class. Was like, holy shit, I need to be here. The people are great. I got to beat the hell out of pads and some other people. This is awesome. So I signed up for a membership. I think at the time it was like $89 or something like that, like $89 a month to go to the gym there. And I didn't have that at all, but I was like, oh, you can take my $89 and I'll figure out rent later. So that was like, it was one of those, I look back at it. I had this conversation the other day. I think I had this conversation with Kyle Langen, but like, that was a choice. I could have very easily been like, oh man, I can't, man, this is super cool, but it's just not going to work. I don't have the money for it. Like, I chose that. I need to be here. Like, this is what I want to be doing. And so, yeah, I handed him a check. I had no fucking money. So I showed up every single day. I usually get there about like 30 minutes before they open. So I would just do like burpees and run laps in the parking lot. And then the guy that owned the gym, his name was Mark Slane, really took me under his wing. I think he realized like, hey, this kid's fucking batshit crazy and needs a little bit of guidance, and he's also very committed. So I paid dues there for 2 months, and then he realized, you don't have money, do you? I don't. You can't really afford to be here, do you? I can't. All right, cool. Mop the mats. Are you interested in becoming an instructor? I stopped, I canceled all your dues. So I only paid twice.
Wow.
And he saw something. Yeah. So he was a huge mentor for me. He bought me my first gi for jiu-jitsu. He paid for my first membership at Rogue Fitness, which at the time was just a CrossFit gym. They didn't sell anything at the time back in 2008. So I was training CrossFit over at Rogue Fitness, and then I'd come over to the gym and learn how to teach. He sent me to LA to get certified in Krav Maga. He sent me to Virginia Beach to get certified in CrossFit. He paid my affiliate fees for me to open the CrossFit affiliate that I still own, almost 15 years later. So he took me under his wing. So I started coaching. 2 years after that, I dropped out of Ohio State. I was a landscape architecture major at a time. And he came to me late 2009 and was like, hey, I'm going to open a second facility. I need somebody to run it. Are you interested? And I was like, hell yeah. He was like, I can pay you $1,000 a month. And I was like, that sounds awesome. So I dropped out of Ohio State at the time, left my other job at the time and started doing that full time. Him and I started traveling around the country teaching Krav Maga certifications. At the time, I was explicitly Krav Maga. And then along the way, throughout this entire path, I was, blessed to meet people like Rob Pincus, who taught me about firearms, Kali with a gentleman by the name of Elman Kavataj, who's a high-end Balintawak Kali guy. I started training jiu-jitsu with a lot of really high-end people. Started training kickboxing. My first kickboxing instructor, Jason Lai. So I was getting a lot of training, and Mark instilled a lot of really good, you talk about building men. Mark instilled a lot of really great principles into a very young, spiteful person early on. Like, you never know enough. There's always somebody that knows more than you, so continue to seek out people. When you walk into a seminar, be open-minded. You know what I mean? Don't try to shut them down. Listen to everything they've got to go on. Even from a business standpoint, I remember him sitting the entire staff down. I can't remember when this was, maybe like 2009 or 10. And we were kind of hitting a lower, I don't know if you want to call it a recession, but the economy was definitely a bit down. And he sat everybody down and he goes, look, we can sit back and we can piss and moan and bitch about, a bad economy. He goes, it's just the economy. This is what we're dealing with. So let's focus on what we've got and let's make adjustments and let's adapt. And that, I can vividly remember these big points he was making across the way that still stick with me. I don't know that he could define exactly what those points were or when he learned them. However, as I grew up through that, I look back and go like, shit, man, he dropped a lot of knowledge bombs on some things. And now I understand, a little more where they come from. But anyway, he fell away. Him and I had a little bit of a falling out. He moved away. And then somebody else took over the gyms at the time. And that was 2012. So the end of 2012, I sat down with that individual and said, hey, I want to buy this location out. I started it from day one and this is my baby. I really want to run it. That didn't match their business plan. So I said, okay, cool. I'm going to step away and open up my own facility. I was very transparent on how that was going to happen. So we opened up our center, Endeavor Defensive Fitness, which is where I'm at now, in February of 2013. And we've been doing that ever since. And then since then, a lot of bigger things started to come up. I literally just finished last weekend. I finished my last year as a chairman for the Arnold Sports Festival. I ran the CrossFit wasn't officially sanctioned, the functional fitness section of the Arnold Sports Festival since 2014 or 13. In 2016, I traveled across the country, taught 80 plus seminars on active shooter defense. That's what led me to write the eventual book. And then, most recently I've been traveling around with a program that I developed alongside Mike Chaney, who's my black belt jiu-jitsu, and then also a gentleman by the name of Eli Knight, who's very well known in the jiu-jitsu world, called Knife Control Concepts. And so I travel around the country and we put on 2-day trainings on essentially how to build and develop grappling skills to deal with an edged weapon based off whatever that context is. And so, just along the way, I've done a ton of training. I've been blessed and had opportunities to learn from incredible people, continue to work with incredible people, learn from them, pick things up. I'm 36. I'm very technically I'm young in the industry. Even though I've been doing it for 14 years, and it's a really cool place to be, because a lot of the people that have been around are, will give us really good compliments about like, wow, like the way you carry yourselves and the material is awesome. And so that's very uplifting, to a younger coach in the industry. And then still in the same regard, I get to learn from these people that have been around for, 30 years and just sit back and be like, shit, man, I haven't even scratched the surface. So me personally, as far as like my career in this right now, I'm in such a fun spot because I know I'm really, really good. And I also know that I'm not even anywhere near where I'm going to be or could be, or even scratch the surface of that's such a cool place to be. And that's a huge part of coming out of the Enlifted program. You're in the level 2 right now. And that was a neat part about the whole celebrating wins thing. And the quarterman idea was like, you're allowed to, Jocko Willink would say like dichotomies, right? Like you're allowed to sit in a space and be like, this is awesome. And in the same exact breath, be like, I can't wait to do better. Right. It's like, you can actually enjoy both of those worlds instead of, if you feel good about yourself, the way that I was raised is like, well, then you're egotistical or you're an asshole. And then the other end of it, which is like, oh, well, then I'm just unworthy of everything. It's like, no, you can actually be in a good spot and also want to get better. So that's the 5-minute overview of my career over the last 15 years.
No, I appreciate that. And it's interesting. You mentioned Enlifted level 1 and level 2. People that listen to the podcast have heard me speak about that. A lot of the guests that we've had on have gone through that certification. It's such a powerful thing. Level 1, you really talk about you get the shit out of your head. There's so many the negative stories that you tell yourself. So it's talking about who's that inner demon that talks shit to you. What does he or she say? How do they say it? And it's looking at the devil in the face, laughing at the devil so they go away. And that's pretty much what you do. So it's this deep emotional experience that you go through. Level 2, it's celebrating the wins like you had mentioned, Aaron, and it's talking about the things that have gone really well for you. So it's recognize those things. As human beings, we think about the negative shit so much. We never really go through it. We never really write it down or read it out or go through that difficult emotional experience. Also, we don't write down the good shit. We don't talk about the good stuff. We don't write it down and really experience it. I did it last week. This past week, I went on through my one-on-one coaching session with Mark England, and it was celebrating wins. And it was nice things people have said to you. Nice things people have done.
That was
emotional. And here's the thing. I didn't anticipate it. I knew the other shit, getting rid of those negative stories was going to be an emotional journey for me. I knew it going in. I have those stories that I told myself for years and years, so I expected it. When it was talking about nice things people have said to you, have done to you, and your biggest wins, I didn't anticipate how emotional it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And for me, the first one was a letter from my son that I keep in my wallet on Father's Day that he wrote to me as I was going through my divorce. And what he's like, you're not just my hero, you're my Superman. And I read it, and I'm like, right now I'm choking up a little bit, but I read it, and I didn't anticipate it getting to that heart spot where I just like emotionally broke down. I'm like, wow, really powerful shit when you can celebrate the wins. And then it's the corner man. Who's that person that will pick you up when you're feeling down? What do they say to you? How do they say it? What do they say when you're ready to give up? And I'm thinking fucking Mickey talking to Rocky. Like, get up, you son of a bitch, because Mickey loves ya. Like, he's like the guy in the corner. So it's talking about that corner man that's going to pump you up. So your corner man, well, who is your corner man? Like, who is the guy, the gal? Like, who is that corner man for you?
I wish I had my journal with me, because like, so we talked about this, I think a little bit earlier on. Like, I watched professional wrestling growing up. So like when I wrote out my description of my fucking corner man for level 2, and now level 2 for me, I was the first level 2 certification. So I was like class 1 of level 2. So I mean, fuck, I don't know. That was 2 years ago, maybe. And like, it was something along the lines of like a crossover between Ric Flair, Roddy Piper, and then like Mick and Apollo. Like it was this weird fucking concoction of like those four human beings like embodied in one, because I wanted them to have like mixed grit, but then I also kind of wanted the Roddy Piper like Scottish accent like a little bit underneath it, and like it was this whole fucking thing. And my
and he was gonna go woo,
yeah, right. And then every now and again, just like you're on the floor, and he's just like, oh, you know, and I shit you not, even before I went into Enlifted Level 2, where you had to pick your theme song, I had used Princes of the Universe by Queen, which was like the Highlander theme song. And I was like fucking like, oof. I would wake up every morning on Level 2 and I'd read through my fucking cornerman thing, and I'd be driving down the road at 5 o'clock in the morning listening to Queen going fucking A1. But yeah, mine was like I wanted like the style of Ric Flair with the Scottish accent of Roddy Piper and the grit of fucking Mick. And then I just wanted like Apollo dancing around, and like that's how I envisioned this weird fucking corner man that I had. And he would just always be like, "You're a goddamn wrecking ball, get the fuck up," you know. And I wish I had it, because I went deep into that journaling exercise. Like I wrote out, it was descriptive. I think even Mark at the end of it was like, "Jesus, man, like how much time did you put into that?" Like, a lot.
Yeah,
like a corner man means a lot to me right now.
That is, I'm so happy that I asked that question right there. And even Apollo Creed, from like his physique in Rocky 3, Rocky 2 was just, and his hair was so fucking good too. His hair was amazing. Carl Weathers he understated. He doesn't get enough credit in that time frame with like Schwarzenegger and Stallone and that whole group, like Jean-Claude Van Damme. Carl Weathers was a fucking badass, man. He really was.
Badass.
You think about like the movie The Predator. Dylan! Like he was a fucking badass, dude. So let me shift really quickly into, you mentioned before about the guy was like, you know, here's this fucking batshit crazy kid who's here in February fucking mopping the mats. You write him the check for $89. You're like, you know what? Cash this in 2012 if you don't mind. I'll have the money in my account by then. So there's that, right. You have to have that little bit of batshit crazy, but there also needs to be like that calculated, you know, thing when you're going to an experience where you're going to be, you know, fighting with someone or interacting with someone in a physical sense. So are you more in like the, you know, Miyagi-Do karate, or are you more in the Cobra Kai mindset? Where do you sit in that continuum?
I would like to think that I am when Eagle Fang and Miyagi-Do, when they actually started connecting towards the end of that season and like had a little bit of respect where they were like training together, I'd like to think that I am the embodiment of that. Like, I'm going to make you do the fucking weird shit. I'm a huge fan. Like, I look at it this way, like Miyagi-Do has it right. I love that we're using this as references. But like Miyagi-Do has it right in the mindset that's like emotionally, like you should have your shit in check. You should address whatever's going on. You should understand the importance of breath work. You should understand the importance of consistency and slowing things down and being fluid. And let's be real, LaRusso is terrible at fucking communication, but he thinks he's good at communication. Like, he should have communication going in. But in the same exact regard, like the physical grit is just, it's oftentimes understated. I feel like when you talk about, and this may just be my experience and my opinion, when people talk about, you know, this idea of like, what is a man and things like that, it's like almost like most people are one side or the other. Like, there's either toxic masculinity, and I think you should have your emotions in order and you shouldn't be, you know, tough and nitty gritty and all that. Or there's like fucking man's man, you know what I mean? Like I love Ryan Mickler to death, but like Ryan Mickler, right? I don't know if you follow him, but it's, yeah, you know, it's just like, you know, we can find a middle ground. Like, yes, you should be able to go outside, fucking grit through some shit. You should be able to hold a position, or, you know, from an emotional standpoint, hold my shit for a minute if I need to be the one who needs to hold their shit for a minute. And then I also need to know that I need to get my shit in order and I need to actually address those emotions and those things. So like having that in the middle ground, I feel it's making a better shift, or at least maybe I'm just in the communities that are making that shift. However, that's like all too often, I feel like that's the bounce back between the two.
Yep.
So I like to think that I'm in the middle from a self-defense standpoint, because in the same exact session, so you were a principal, and you have interactions and connections with kids, and active shooter is something that was on your mind. You were in the throngs of it during Sandy Hook and things like that. So when I go out and I have a conversation with people about active shooter, and I'm talking to a principal, or I'm talking to teachers that have spent X amount of years where their entire mindset, or at least hopefully their entire mindset, is like, how do I nurture these children? How do I take care of them? How do I deal with the shit that they're probably dealing with at home and make the best experience for them in any way, shape, or form? Like, your embodiment is to love these kids. My job is to come in and look at you and go like, yes, I completely understand that. And if you're standing across from a 14-year-old that has a gun and they're about to kill you, do you have and understand the psychological and emotional elements that you might need to incapacitate or kill that kid for the sake of you and the other kids, right? And so we can go too far, into the emotional spectrum, which is like, well, yes, we should be empathetic and try to understand where they're coming from and be proactive with the kids' psychology and taking care of them so we never end up here. But in the same exact regard, if I'm supposed to be embodying and helping all of these kids, well, then I also need to understand the reality of situations like this is fucked up and gritty. And that is, I might need to beat the shit out of a 13-year-old kid and potentially kill him if it means saving the lives of all of these other kids in there. And that's a fucked up place to be. And that's where I put myself, so I can come in and I can go, look, here's the physical skills to do that. Here's the emotional reality behind it. So I talk a lot with people in our seminars about strategy, like what's the most strategic element, and then what's the realities of the emotional element, and then how do we tie those two together and understand them. And where I can bridge that gap a little bit is now I can sit down with somebody and I can use the language game. Right. So people will say certain things like, I could never. It's like, okay, well, let's break that down. What does never mean? Or I can actually take somebody that has an emotional experience now during a training session, and I can pull them aside. I can turn things over to an assistant instructor or another capable lead instructor, and I can actually pull them aside and do like a little mini story work session on the side to get them to show up at their absolute best, whether that's being fucking tough and gritty and things up for a minute and fucking going after it, or whether that's being able to handle the aftermath, the emotional stress, the fucking PTSD, whatever the hell's going on with them. And that's huge. And trying to play one of the other doesn't work. So when you talk about like, my Miyagi-Do or my fucking Cobra Kai, like I like to think I'm doing a really good job of finding that middle ground, taking the fucking tough guys and being like, brother, like you're tough as shit and you can take a couple punches to the face. But I bet I make this joke, but I bet if we sat across a bottle of fucking bourbon that I could make your ass cry in fucking 30 minutes and we start talking about your childhood, you know what I mean? And then taking people on this side where it's like, I've got my emotional stuff in order, and it's like, cool. Somebody breaks in your house in the middle of the night. They're 6'2", 240 pounds. They're hyped up and they've got a fucking knife. What are you going to do about that? And it's like, well, yeah, motherfucker, we got to go over here. You need to get punched in the face a couple of times. You got to fucking work out. You got to grit some shit out. So I like to think I'm like the fucking in the middle. Yeah. The fucking middle, man.
It's a perfect embodiment of what we stand for with building men. It's the idea, even with masculinity, it's the idea where you need to have that level of strength, strength of character, physical strength. You have to be able to take care of yourself. So there needs to be that side of it. There also needs to be the piece where you're okay with being vulnerable. You're in touch with that shit, because if you just push it down and stuff it away, it's going to come up in a negative circumstance in your life. It's going to rear its ugly head if you don't deal with that shit. So it's being able to sit in that middle with both, where you're not all the way to one side, where you're so like a guy breaks into your house and you're like, you know what, I'm going to journal about this. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to journal. I'm going to think about my feelings and my thoughts, and I'm going to manifest him going away. And all the way on the other side, like, you know, you walk to the fucking grocery store and somebody doesn't put their cart away and you fucking grab them by the neck and throw them into the wall and then eat a bloody heart off the fuck. Like, it doesn't have to be either one of those. It could be in that spot where you're able to take care of yourself and also take care of your emotions. And I think that was a really harmonious way to present that. I love it.
Well, and it needs to be. And here's the thing. Like, first off, I love the method, the imagery around my head. Around like securing into a barricade, and then instead of going to access my gun and call 911 to get the cops there, it's like, where's my journal? I am feeling stressed right now. Hold on. Let me change stress.
My inner child is telling me that my dad didn't love me, so I'm not able to deal with this situation.
So like, but think about like journaling in that element is so fucking powerful, not in that moment, but having that skill set after that fucking moment, right? That is so powerful and underrated in that. But in self-defense, all too often, in my experience, the exposure I've had is that the tough guy element will make people make decisions that fuck them up. And so here's a prime example. I was doing a personal training session with a gentleman probably like 2 or 3 months ago. And he asked like, hey, you know, if I'm out at a bar, right? And that's always like, anytime anybody starts that conversation, it's like, we could probably solve this problem by you not going to that bar. But that's a whole other conversation. Yeah. But anyway, he's like, let's say I'm out and I'm with my wife and I'm walking out and some drunk guy calls my wife a whore. I go, okay. And he goes, well, what should I do? And I go, leave. And he's like, but he called my wife a whore. It's like, is your wife a whore? No. Okay, then why do you care about the opinion of a drunk guy? Well, you know, I need to stand up for the honor of my wife. And it's like, that is an embodiment and it is an ideology. But here's the problem. Okay, let's workshop this. So a guy calls your wife a whore. What do you want to say right now? And he's like, well, I'm gonna get in front of his face and I'm gonna tell him like, you can't talk to my fucking wife that way. I said, okay. And now he decides to throw a punch. And how's that gonna go? And now, mind you, in all respect to the person I was working with, he has no self-defense training, no fighting background at all. And so you're now voluntarily walking into a physical confrontation with a drunk person, right? So their inhibitions and self-preservation is already way lower. And people that have zero self-preservation or lower self-preservation that dive committed into a fight, that shit's dangerous. Because if you're worried about getting hurt when you're fighting, you're a little more on the defensive. When you don't give a fuck, you're offensive, and that's a problem. So I said, okay, so you're throwing yourself into a physical altercation with no physical fighting skills, right? Which that's also a huge problem with men in general, is we tend to think we can fight even though we can't fight. And it's based usually off of like, well, yeah, but when I was 13, you know, I scuffled with a kid, and it's like, well, that's great. But now people will stab you in the face with a broken beer bottle and shoot you over road rage. Like, we got some problems here. So I just workshopped this with him, and I said, okay, so you tell him you can't talk to your wife that way. He throws a punch. You grab onto him. Okay, let's say that you win. Okay, cool. You just beat the fuck out of this guy. Now let's look at it from a legality standpoint. If I was defending myself in the court of law because this guy decides after I bash his head off the floor to take me to court, okay, was I able to leave? Yes. Okay, but you chose not to. Okay, so that's a strike against you right out of the gate as you're going into this. I noticed that I'm going this way.
Yeah.
But anyway,
that'll be the clip on Instagram and YouTube.
Right. So you already have that strike against you. And then, okay, the guy used words, and now we get into like, were you a willing participant? And it's like, well, yeah, you were a willing participant because you showed up. So it's like, okay, well, now you're already fucked.
You're fucked.
And then it's like, did you use enough, the appropriate amount of force? And it's like, okay, so like legally you can't even defend yourself in this case. And now let's say you knock the guy unconscious or you send him to the hospital. Well, now you got to deal with that. Let's say the guy pulls out a fucking knife and stabs you. Well, now you're all of this because you were emotionally attached to a person you do not know saying something about somebody you care about, right? That is the shit that gets people killed way more often, at least from a male perspective. But this day and age, the ego gets people killed way fucking more often than a legitimate self-defense situation. Don't go stupid places with stupid people to do stupid things. That's like rule number one in not getting in a bad situation. And then when you get there, again, I'm negation acknowledged here. Don't let your fucking ego drive the conversation. Don't let the ego drive your decisions. If I don't take the time to journal and address the shit that happened to me as a kid and face all of the shit that goes on inside of my head, I'm going to make poor decisions under stress because that shit's driving the wheel. And I can tell you that from experience. I got into a lot more fights before I trained and before I got my shit figured out than I ever did once I started journaling and fucking crying and learning the language game and learning what fighting actually meant and embodied. And that's the massive truth. And then you got the far side, the other side, where it's, you know, again, unfortunately, females are told like, oh, you're too small and you can't defend yourself. Here's a fucking stun gun. And that's a whole other conversation. It's like, no, man, like, let's all get our shit in order psychologically and also learn how to be savage as shit. And that's like, then you'll be happy.
So I want to play out that situation. So now you're out for a nice dinner with your lady friend or whoever, and you're not trying to interact with someone, but someone comes at you. Like, it's not, you're there. It's, you know, out of the blue, something comes up where now you have to physically defend yourself, protect the person who's next to you. With it, and I know it's very challenging to do this via audio podcast and even a video, but is there some piece of advice that you can give someone that's involved in a situation, even just situational awareness? What should they be looking, their stance, anything like that, that if they were in a moment where they needed to react, respond to protect themselves, to get themselves in a safe thing, piece of advice or two that you might be able to give?
Yeah, totally. The first thing I'm going to say right out of the gate is training matters. It's one of the hashtags I use all the time. The more you train, the higher your potential to survive any situation thrown at you. So if you have no training, you are choosing to have the lowest potential to defend yourself. Like that is a choice. And that's something a lot of people don't talk about. So it's like, well, I shouldn't have to defend myself. It's like, well, I mean, I guess ideologically that's true, but humans have been fucking murdering each other since the existence of humans. So like, it's your job to defend yourself. So you like training. I've been training for 14 years, coming on 15 years, full time. And if I walk down to my car and I'm just pissed off, it's been a long day and I'm not paying attention, and some dude smacks me across the back of the head with a brick and then stomps on my head 5 times, it didn't fucking matter. You know what I mean? Like, training is training. So I'm going to increase my potential. So there's no easy answer. And if you're looking for an easy answer, you're missing the point. So there's that. Now, I will say this, 3 things that I would say right out of the gate. One's going to be like a mind setting. It's a very generic term. However, in the industry, what we're talking about is when you go out, accepting that you could be attacked is a huge step in the right direction, right? So instead of walking out and being like, well, bad things never happen in my neighborhood, or, you know, no one's been stabbed in my town and blah, 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 whatever. Just accepting like, hey, look, it's very unlikely. However, there's a chance I get attacked, so let me at least have my mind right about the idea that could happen. So that would be like piece number 1, get your mind in the right position, which is like, hey, this is a potential possibility. Maybe what are some things I would do? Step number 2, do everything you can to leave or not be in bad situations or put yourself in a position to de-escalate. So verbal judo is awesome. Being able to understand like social cues and interaction cues, you can usually talk people down pretty quick, or at least fuck with their head. Craig Douglas, anybody who wants to seek out training, Craig Douglas, in my opinion, is the best at what we refer to as like verbal judo. Like teaching somebody verbal judo, how to talk somebody down and get them at least off their rocker. And then if you get to a physical confrontation, if you have zero choice, you've done everything you can to avoid it, you've tried to de-escalate, whatever, you can't leave, they're blocking the exit, and you don't have any training, because again, remember, training matters, then you need to be as violent as humanly possible. That's the key. There's no magic technique. There's no movement. There's no specific stance. There's no, just poke them in the eyes or just kick them in the groin. Like a lot of those are all marketing strategies that have come up through the self-defense industry, right? Violence is necessary where training is lacking. So that's the major balance between when you look at a lot of these things. The more training I have, the more I get to choose the level of violence. The less training I have, you have to be violent because you're not trained enough to not be. So people need to accept, or people get to accept, I offer it to them, that violence is a very, very good thing to embody when used in the right context. So yes.
It's like going from Yoda to Tasmanian Devil. Like you want to get...
or just Yoda to fucking Yoda when he has a lightsaber.
Right,
like,
to when he fucks up the Emperor. I was amazed.
Right.
What a great scene. That was amazing scene. When he kind of crutches in and then he takes out the lightsaber and he's flying around, he's jumping around. It was like, holy shit. Or when he fought Count Dooku. That was amazing. And that was like the first time when you see him fight Count Dooku where you're like, my God, he is a fucking badass.
Yeah. Well, I always used to joke around. Mark Slane, the guy that brought me up, like I said, that he was a big mentor to me. We always used to joke around and say he was like Yoda because like all day he would just piss and moan about like, oh, my back hurts and my legs hurt. And he'd be like limping around the gym. And then that fucker would put on a set of gloves and he would work you like just just like jump spin back kicks and fucking murdering people. And then like the round would be over and he'd be like, oh, I'm so old. And I'm like, oh man, like you're like you piss me off. You're like Yoda, but yeah, it's to keep with the Star Wars reference, I would say like Yoda and then turn into Chewbacca. Just fucking beat the fuck out of things and shoot people with a laser.
I want to make sure that we get to the active shooter piece as well. My experience as a middle school principal for many years, you had to do a fire drill a month, then you had one other drill. It could be a shelter in place, it could be a bomb threat, or it could be an active shooter drill. And some of the active shooter drills, the police were involved, and they would come in, and we would, the kids were really anxious about it whenever we did the drills. And, we brought people in from the local police department to talk to the kids about it. But to me, it was always... All right, well, first of all, if somebody wants to do damage to students in a school, they're going to call in a bomb threat. Call a spade a spade. Like, if I really want to hurt kids in a school, I'm going to call in a bomb threat. Everyone's going to evacuate, and then you sit there and you pick people off. Like, that's really the reality. And I would talk to the police about it, and I said, well, what do we do there? Like, well, you run. You fucking start running. Like, that was pretty much what they told us at the time. But now you go into schools and you recognize that teachers are anxious, kids are really anxious. So if I'm talking to my 16-year-old son, my 14-year-old daughter about, okay, if someone is in the school and they're going to do harm, what are a couple things that you would tell to, middle high school age students?
Yeah. So active shooter is a deep one. A lot of the programs that you're going to see that are currently widely accepted by especially schools are done so in a manner where they're based a lot around group response. They're based a lot around very basic concepts and ideas. And then they're also filtered through the red tape of what are we allowed to say? What's not going to get us sued and all that type stuff. And that's very unfortunate. When you're talking about the potential of somebody coming in and murdering a bunch of kids, young adults, whatever age group that we're getting into, the fact that we have to run it through a fine-tooth comb from a liability standpoint is disingenuous. And in most cases, we're showing them this enough that, hey, this is a reality, so let's drill this once or twice a year or whatever that is. And yet, so like it builds the anxiety of, oh, wow, this is an actual possibility every day I walk into class. And we're not exposing them enough so that they can actually learn what may actually save them and what may actually get out of them. So it's, in my opinion, we're failing a lot on a grand scheme in that manner. When we go out and we teach active shooter stuff, we focus on the individual. The way that we baseline it is every single individual should have a plan to deal with somebody trying to kill them. And that plan should be based off no backup. So there's no one else going to help you. That's where the plan should start. No one else is going to help you. You have no weapons and you have no additional tools. So that's an important place to start, because if I have no backup then I have to start looking at, like, okay, what are my physical abilities to run? What are my physical abilities to fight somebody if I had to fight somebody? No weapons puts you into a baseline. Well, in a school setting, no one should have a weapon. There's improvised weapons and sure things like that, but nobody should have a weapon. No legal abiding, person is technically going to walk in there. I say no loosely, but you get the idea, right? So I should know how to fight somebody without any gear, no fighting, no tools, no guns, no knives, nothing, right? Start there. And then no tools, so like additional, like med kits, things along those lines. And those are important because when we get into this, oftentimes when you see, and not to put them on blast, but I'm going to say this because people are used to hearing it. Like Alice, for instance, is a very well-known organization that teaches active shooter training. And when you watch some of the videos, they'll show like a demonstration where bad guy walks into the room with a gun, and all of a sudden everybody in the class simultaneously throws a book at him and rushes him. Well, that's so unrealistic. Like if I'm sitting in class, let's be real, bored out of my fucking mind, I'm in like Calc 3, literally going like, I am never going to use this ever in my life. I wonder what Bitcoin dropped to today. You know what I mean? Like you're not in there anyway. So you're not even paying attention to what's going on with the teacher, let alone considering the fact that maybe somebody busts through the door and starts shooting. Because if you were, that's like a terrible way to live, right? So you're caught off guard. So you're going to have to look and see what's happening over here when somebody's shooting. Then you're going to see people getting shot. Then you're going to hear people freaking the fuck out and screaming, right? All of this is happening. There is not going to be a calm, cool, collective, grab my book, turn towards the door and throw my fucking book. And now all of a sudden we get into that. So in my opinion, it's very disingenuous to do group training. Everybody should be trained as an individual. And then that way you start that way. And if other people jump in, then okay, that's icing on a cake. As an individual, if I can get away, I should get away. I want to get as far away from the bang, bang noises as possible. If you're supposed to shelter in place or lock down, again, if I'm talking, my son's 6, but if I'm talking to a 16-year-old, if you're told to shelter in place and you are damn certain that the shooter is inside of the building, fuck your teacher. You open the goddamn window, you throw a fucking thing through the window, you get the fuck out of the school and you run away as far as you can. Get out of the building, right? If the shooter's outside, okay, now we're talking about a different story. Now I'm trying to do what we refer to as keep away. So we break it down into very general terms instead of run, hide, fight. Run is not always the case. Get away is what we look at. That might be running, crawling. If you're in a fucking wheelchair, that might be wheeling your ass away. That might be getting into a car. So get away from the bad guy. Keep them away. Keep them away can be shutting doors, either to lock them into a place or to lock us into a place. Make sure that you understand what that door is made out of. If there's a window, that's not really that secure. If it's a glass fucking wall, that's not going to help. Understand what type of building material is in there. So it's hard to shoot through brick, but it's easy to shoot through drywall. So I need to understand like where are studs at and how do I build things? And if the door goes in exterior or interior, like you have barricading drills that are taught oftentimes, right? Pile a bunch of shit in front of the doors. However, fire code is in schools, classroom doors should push open so that when I have to evacuate to get out of a fucking room, it goes that way. Well, putting a bunch of shit in front of a door that is outward opening door isn't getting the same result that they think it's getting, right? So again, disingenuous because we're not actually talking about reality. And fire code, I don't want to say doesn't matter. We haven't had a death inside of a school, since fire code's been put in the 90s, but still, like, it matters. It works, so we do it. So you have to understand that. So then what does that look like? And then, where can I go? If somebody's outside, getting away or keeping away might be staying inside. So now I'm locking and getting into a corner and putting brick or, in between us and things like that. So there's that piece of the puzzle. Everybody should know how to fight, and it shouldn't be a bullshit, in my opinion. It should be a realistic conversation about what a one-on-one fight against somebody with a gun looks like. That fight is ugly. It should be as violent as possible. When we teach people about like hierarchy of violence, if somebody says bad words to me, then I should be, if somebody is threatening physical violence, but not actually doing physical violence, I should be prepared to do physical violence. If somebody is willing to do physical violence to me, I should be prepared to do very, very, very severe damage. If they're willing to do severe damage to me, I should be prepared to kill them. And if they're willing to kill me, then I should definitely be fucking prepared to kill them, right? So if I find myself in a one-on-one fight with somebody with a gun, the goal should be to guarantee that I am safe. We can guarantee that I am safe when that person is immobilized. So I break their fucking kneecaps, break their elbows, break their hands in a manner where they literally cannot fight. Where they're unconscious, so they can't fucking fight because they're unconscious, or they're dead. Those are the three physical circumstances in which I can guarantee I'm safe. When you talk about the ideology of like everybody swarm them, jump on them, and stretch them out and wait until the police officers show up, that to me is the most dishonest reality of a situation that you could get into, because it feels nice. Remember we talked about earlier, I don't want to have to kill a kid. I don't want to have to fight somebody that I've been trying to teach fucking math to and give life lessons to. Like, good Lord in heaven, imagine somebody from your original Building Men group that just, man, we tried really hard and we couldn't get to him, and that's the person that shows up. I don't want to hurt that kid. But if I'm constantly pushed, most people that don't know how to fight do not have the fucking physical skill set to control somebody. It is hard to fucking control somebody. That's why we run into issues with law enforcement. They're not trained how to fight. And then they're told to go control somebody without hurting them. Remember what we said earlier. The less training you have, the more violent you have to be to incapacitate somebody. The more training you have, then I can fucking control somebody. I can roll them over, push them, get into the positions I want because I have training. So we find ourselves in positions where people die, can die, have died, because the fight isn't what they were told the fight would be. If I'm a one-on-one situation and I have to fight somebody, the reality of it is I need to be violent. So if you're going to shoot me, I have to be willing to bash your head into the corner of a desk. It doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. But psychologically and physically, I need to be fucking prepared for that. So the reality of it is that's the way that we would address it. If I'm talking to, my 16 or 17-year-old, that's where I'm going. Look, I'm sure they have a plan in place. We're going to look at this as how do you protect you? So we're going to look at how you get away and make decisions that way. We're going to look at how you keep the bad guy away. We're going to look at what a fight looks like. I'm going to teach you how to I'm going to throw a tourniquet in your bag, your book bag, and I'm going to tell you how to put a fucking tourniquet on. I'm going to tell you how to do chest seals. That way, if you get injured or somebody you care about gets injured, you have the medical skills to buy time until paramedics can safely get on scene. You need to have those things. Self-protection, medical care is a huge part of that. Like there's don't get shot, and then there's I got shot, what do I do about it?
Right.
Yeah, so like that's a huge piece of the puzzle. And then the fifth wing of that is the aftermath. So now, where's my journaling? What are my resources so that, I can address the psychological and emotional issues that are going to bunker me down, going forward? What are the resources that I can reach out to? How can I get into that stuff? And that's a deeper conversation, and it has to be, because we're not fucking talking about, you got bullied. Right? And it's not to downplay bullying. Bullying is ridiculous. But bullying in its sense, compared to someone is trying to murder us, it's like, fuck, man, that's a deep conversation. Why are we trying to push it off? Bullying is the same regard. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, just tell a teacher. It's like, well, fuck, I did, and nothing happened.
Right.
What now? Well, you're not allowed to hit them. Well, fuck me. What am I supposed to do? They don't want to listen to my words. The teacher's not helping me, and we get into it. They require deeper conversations, and unfortunately, we're culturally speaking, as the business of education, we're unwilling to spend that time having the deeper conversations. So that's I get very passionate about this topic, by the way.
Absolutely. And listen, I would love to have you back on and even get deeper into this, because it's fascinating. And I think about, and what I appreciate you going through that whole experience. Really, I was able to see that in my head. So I played out that story in my head as you were talking, and so I appreciate you going into that. Even just the running away piece of it, to be cognizant and think about it. I went in my head to Game of Thrones end of season 5, Battle of the Bastards. Ramses Bolton has Rickon Stark, and he lets him run, and he just runs straight, and Bolton fucking picks him off with the arrow. Just fucking zigzag, do something. I'm like, don't run in a straight line. Fucking do something. So that hit me too. Just having that conversation with my kids about, okay, if you should ever find yourself in a situation, let's really talk about it. It's scary to talk about it. I get it. It brings up negative emotions, but let's do that now. So this way you can fall back on those thoughts. It's like visualizing things in your head before you actually go through them. So I appreciate that. And I also thought about Jordan Peterson, who I love. He talks about let kids do the dangerous things carefully. Don't protect kids in a way, put them in a bubble. If they're doing dangerous things in a careful way, what a great learning experience for kids to go through, especially young men, doing those things that push them, get your adrenaline pumping a little bit, but doing it in a controlled way. The same thing would go for a situation like that. Think about those situations, but think about it in the way to get yourself into a safe spot rather than, all right, somebody called my wife a whore, so I'm going to fucking, hit him in the face with a cue stick. That's not what we're talking about. We're being cognizant of it as well.
I'll tell you right now, you talk about doing dangerous things in a meaningful and careful way. Getting your kids into realistic self-defense and having legitimate conversations early is awesome. The days of and respectfully, there's good lessons we learn from it, but the days of Taekwondo and karate and things like that as the kids' martial art are past. They need to be doing wrestling. They need to be doing kids Krav Maga. They need to be doing arts that actually have pressure. Teach them about pressure. Somebody trying to, insert their will upon you physically, and then learning how to get out of it. Having honest conversations as they age. My son is 6 years old. He knows how to put a tourniquet on. He knows why he would put a tourniquet on. I'm not having somebody comes in the middle of the night, we could get murdered. You need to be able to put daddy. But hey, listen, if daddy's ever hurt or if mommy's ever hurt and we have a lot of blood coming out of one of our arms or our legs, this is a really good tool for us to get into that. I can have that conversation with him. I had an 11-year-old named Ava that took our active shooter course twice. Our adult 4-hour active shooter course that involved running away from doing evasion techniques against a fucking real Glock that fired off blanks, doing physical fights over a fucking gun, applying tourniquets, doing medical scenarios where she had to drag her own fucking mother after putting a tourniquet on her, and then running full-blown scenarios. And she was so fucking jacked about it, she started going back to her school and telling all her friends, y'all got to come to this fucking seminar, right? This shit was awesome. And then they came back again. And kudos to her mom for reaching out and saying, hey, my daughter's 11. She wants to come into this. And me saying I'm okay with that. I want you to know this is an adult program. There will be no punches pulled. We will talk very honestly about it. And she was fucking incredible. I got the coolest pictures with her afterwards. She's doing that. And that is empowerment. She got into, I'm pretty sure, her mom hit me up and was we got into a jiu-jitsu program. She's learning how to defend herself. She wants to do her medical training. Talk about inspirational. Good Lord in heaven, that was 4 years ago. So she's entering high school-ish now at this point in time. God bless it. That now she's prepared, right? And that's as prepared as you can be. Okay, from an individual standpoint. And that's huge. That's powerful. You need to do, when you're talking about self-defense, when you're talking about survival, you're talking about protection, talking about it is not enough. Negation, acknowledge, negation, acknowledge, negation, acknowledge. You have to do things. You have to physically do things. It's just like fitness. You can talk about a diet all you fucking want. You can talk about physical fitness all you want. If you want to be healthier, you have to do the things, and they suck sometimes. You know what I mean? You embody the reason of why you're doing it, and it completely changes it. So you have to practice putting tourniquets on. You have to practice fighting people, which sucks. It's the greatest thing in the world, really, when you get into it, but it's fucking tiring. It takes a lot of work. You get to mindset, you get to map out buildings you walk into, where are the available exits, all that type of stuff. So you got to do. And if you do it, man, I go out into the world and I have a pretty good sense of what's going on, and I know my exits and I know what's going on there, and I have this level of confidence. It's not false confidence. I understand that I could die any day. I also spend time making peace with death. Just all right, like this could be my fucking day. It is what it is. However, this has all brought me joy. I can go out and know that if something happens, I don't have this like dwelling in this curtain of fear about, oh my God, like what'll happen if that happens? It's like, well, if it happens, I've done everything I could possibly do to give myself a good answer to do it. I feel good about that. I can go to the fucking movie and sit down and watch a movie and know that, maybe I have my gun on and I maybe sat in the back corner so I can see what's going on, or I put myself near an exit. I made a couple of smart decisions and I get to sit and enjoy the movie. I'm not worried about somebody coming in and shooting, right? I understand it's a reality. And I also understand that I have these conversations with my wife. I'm starting to have these conversations with my kids. They know the basic elements of what needs to be done. Exposure in a meaningful manner, letting people do dangerous things carefully and meaningfully makes you a better human and allows you to enjoy life, in my experience. So
the last question I have for you, Aaron, is
I love questions.
People that are listening right now, they turn off the episode, they push pause. What's one piece of advice that you can give the audience of the Building Men podcast that they can do immediately, right after listening to the show, that will make a positive impact on their life?
Oof. One?
Just one.
Yeah. Look, oof, man, that's a toughie. I'm gonna say this, like line up your priorities, legitimately line up your priorities, and then be realistic about what that means. To me, my family is my priority, and to me, I define that as that's the reason I work out to stay healthy so that I can stay alive as long as possible. That's the reason I train really hard so that I can defend them and defend myself. That's the reason that I travel, right? So that I can, help others, but also supply financially my family. It's like, I know why I'm doing the things I'm doing. It's the reason I walked away. I'm walking away from the Arnold after this year because it's too much stress and it takes time away from my family. Like, I know my priorities and they line up that way. If you know your priorities and then you're honest about what that means, in my opinion, if you had to pick one thing, get rid of the shit that's out of alignment with your priorities as much as possible. And then the second thing, go fucking learn how to fight.
We'll give you a bonus one. It was such a good episode. You definitely get a bonus one there. So, quick teaser for the Building Men audience. Me and my brother are putting pen to paper, writing a book, and that's a big part of it. Is that one thing? We've asked that question to countless guests, and every piece of advice has been something different. And it's so interesting because you put all of those things together in one space. It is brilliant. It is such sound advice, such sage advice. All of the things that the men on the podcast, the piece of advice that they have given, it's really a game changer if you were able to take one thing and over the course of a certain number of days, implement this one thing, change your mindset in one way. It can change your life. So, dude, this has been absolutely amazing. I mean, think about what we have gone through. Not just the Capri Sun, the importance of understanding the Capri Sun, the reverse finger countdown where your final finger up is the middle finger, Yoda, Apollo Creed, how understated they were as badass fighters, and then a series of other things as well that we got into. So tell the Building Men audience where we can find you. How do we reach out to you and follow along on your journey?
Yeah, for sure. You can find me on the socials at Jannetti, Aaron, Jannetti, and then Aaron. I'm primarily on Instagram. Facebook's really just like a puppet state. I push all my Instagram over to Facebook. So you can find me there. Also follow Knife Control Concepts on Instagram. That's the program we've been running around. You can pick up my book, How to Survive an Active Killer, on Amazon. If you're interested in learning to fight, I've got a couple instructional video series on effective self-defense. If you look up my name on their website, you'll find those. One of them is an active killer one. And then certainly not least, if you find yourself in Central Ohio, stop by Endeavor Defense and Fitness. You can find that at EndeavorDCF.com or on the Instagrams at EndeavorDCF. So that's all my stuff.
Awesome. We will put all that in the show notes so people can follow along and find you and what you're doing. With all due respect to Dave Robinson, to Steve Lane, to Erin Alejandrino, your fucking beard is killer. I will also want to have an opportunity. It's seeping masculinity right now out of you, and I say that with a pretty solid record of heterosexuality. Pretty solid record. So appreciate you being on the podcast, my man. I would love to have you back on again in a couple months and run it back. This was a blast. For the Building Men audience, find us on Instagram, building.men. Email address is buildingmencoach@gmail.com. Our website is buildingmen.io. I want to thank our sponsors, Become Stronger Industries, the makers of handmade steel maces and hammers, and Finish the Race Apparel for all things Building Men. Go a step further than you thought you can go. We'll see you next time on Building Men.